Welcome to Boris FX Live. Sponsored by Dell Precision Workstations. Create without limits. And by NVIDIA. And Intel.
Hello and welcome to Boris FX Live. My name is Ben Brownlee and we are going to be talking about Final Cut Pro and Continuum FCP. We've got some great guests today, including Jenn Jager, Josh Morgan and Steve Martin. No, not that one. But yes, that one. And it's going to be led by Boris FX's own resident Final Cut expert, Nick Haraz. We also have an unprecedented amount of Final Cut Pro knowledge gathered together for you. And we'd like you to get involved too. So this is Boris FX Live and we are live. So here's how you can get involved. If you're watching on YouTube or at borisfxlive.com, you'll have a lovely little chat window just placed in the right-hand side of the viewer, just for you to, ask your questions, post any comments, and we will try to get to as many as we possibly can throughout this stream. There are many reasons to go to borisfxlive.com. The biggest one of all is going to be going in and entering our competition. We have some big prizes for you. So head on over to borisfxlive.com if you're not already there. Scroll to the bottom of the page and enter in your details to win one of 6 giant prizes. We are going to be giving away 5 complete permanent licenses for Continuum FCP, each which is a $295 value. And we also have one big special prize for one lucky winner, which is an annual subscription of the Boris FX suite. And that is a $1295.00 value. And if you're not one of those lucky winners, we have something for everyone watching this screen, and we will see what that is during the stream. So before we get going, I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors. We have chosen our sponsors specifically for this Apple Final Cut Pro stream. So thank you very much to NVIDIA, Dell, and Intel. And of course, who can forget the Dell Precision 3660 tower? Cost-effective, scalable performance in a mini tower design. Welcome to Dell Technologies. All right, so without any more further ado, let's head on over to the person who's going to be running today's roundtable, and that is Mr. Nick Haraz. Nick, are you with us?
I am with you, Ben. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you very much. And you are, of course, Director of Product Marketing and a Final Cut Pro guru in your own right.
I am. I've been teaching Final Cut for a number of years and just recently released Continuum FCP 2022, which I can't wait to demo and show a little bit later in this webinar. But even more excited for the special guests who are about to join me in a wonderful roundtable discussion about Final Cut Pro.
Yeah, you've got some pretty special ones. We've got friends of the show coming back. So friends of the show, Josh Morgan is making another appearance with us, which I'm very excited to hear him again. We also have Steve Martin coming along as well, and Jenn Jager. You spoke to Jenn for the podcast, didn't you?
I did. I spoke to Jenn back late last year for one of our podcast episodes that's out there now. It was a phenomenal conversation that we had about creativity. You remember being part of that episode as well, Ben, but quite a bit of creative insights that you can check out. And without further ado, I would love to kind of start to introduce and bring in each of our guests. So I was thinking I'm going to start. On my top right, I can see Josh Morgan. Josh, it's great to see you again. Josh is the owner of Capture the Momentum. He's been working in the entertainment industry for 15 years. And on a personal note, me and Ben discovered that he actually taught us, well, me personally, how to work my gimbal, the Xinion Crane 3 at the time, lab. And it was funny when we were in the middle of the conversation in a webinar a few months back, discovering that. So Josh, welcome. I also just love your statement here. Capture the present for the future. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you here too. And you use Final Cut quite a bit for all of your post-production needs. Am I correct?
Yes, everything Final Cut. I started off with Sony Vegas, and that's actually how I got introduced to Boris FX, and then I made the switch to Mac, and then I started using Final Cut ever since.
Awesome, man. I also have joining us today, or we have joining us, Steve Martin. Steve, welcome. I had no idea that you've been teaching Final Cut Pro since 1999. And yet another personal confession, during Final Cut 6 at the time, you're the one who introduced me to all of the new speed changes that hit that application. So it's just great to be here with you. You're the owner of rippletraining.com and have several tutorials on YouTube that you can check out. We'll definitely be sharing that website later. And it's great to have you here too.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. And we're now here with our final guest, Jenn Jager. As Ben had mentioned, you were the interview of a podcast where you provided such amazing insight just in terms of creativity, which we had late last year, but then previewed this year. You have tons of Final Cut tutorials on your YouTube channel and even additional Final Cut and another app that's really personal to me, Apple Motion, that you can find out more information about, jennjager.com. Jenn, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I thought in this roundtable discussion with all three of you, I wanted to start this off by posing a question to Steve right off the bat. And that is, you use Final Cut Pro for all of the production as well as post work and your tutorial work. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to how that's integrated in your workflow.
Well, as you mentioned, I've been using Final Cut since Final Cut 7 back in was it 1999, and then transitioned to Final Cut 10 before they took away the Roman numeral 10 X, whatever. And I've been using it pretty much every day. A lot of people would be surprised to know that I use it less for like day-to-day editing, and I use it a lot for post finishing, sound design, sound effects, audio sweetening. I'm a big fan of Final Cut Pro's rolls paradigm. I find it's really fast, and I use it for color grading, and I use it for database management. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that Final Cut is just this giant, like, dynamic database under the hood, and so we use it to organize all of our assets, our footage, our stock footage, our music libraries, our photo libraries, and we keep all of our libraries up on a Synology server, and so all our editors have access to them. So any library can be pulled down at any point and then searched. PostLab is a great tool for integrating with Final Cut because you can do a lot of offline tagging and logging, and so because we have so many assets, we find it's just the best tool for managing all of our tutorial and our YouTube content.
That's very cool. And Steve, I was wondering how many people are on your team. So when you're saying multiple people accessing your database or your library, how many people are you collaborating with?
We had two full. We had two full-time editors, and one just left the company, so we're down to one right now. But when we were full swing, when we were in full swing, we had 3 editors, and all connected over Ethernet to a Synology server. And Final Cut just made that process just really, really great.
Awesome, man. Josh, do you find things similar with your workflow in how you're using Final Cut to put together your content?
Yeah, Final Cut is it's incredibly user friendly and just so well organized that I mean, I've used so many other different softwares and just nothing comes close to how easy it is to just organize everything and just get edits done super fast. And the rendering speeds, especially if you're using obviously, Mac hardware, it's so fast. So especially with the new M1s, it's incredible. So yes, I completely agree. Incredibly ergonomic and user friendly. So that's why I stay with Final Cut.
Now, just remind me, Josh, did you ever use like another video editor before you stumbled upon Final Cut, or was that the first application that you were introduced to?
Yeah, so I started off like my first professional software was Sony Vegas. That was for Windows. And actually, it's probably the most underrated video editing software for PC. Everyone's crazy about Adobe Premiere, but Sony Vegas completely underrated. But yeah, Sony Vegas was what I kind of learned all the pro stuff on, and I just got tired of getting a ton of viruses on PC, so I made the switch to Mac, and that's how I just got introduced to Final Cut.
Very cool. Jenn, do you share some similar sentiments in terms of your production and post pipeline and how you're using Final Cut?
Yeah, I mean, everyone in our office uses Final Cut. I've got a team of six, all in house, and only one of them is like on the business side. Everybody else, there's five of us, and we all produce and shoot and edit. Everybody does everything here. And, sometimes it makes it hard to find talent. When I say we, I'm like an evangelist for Final Cut, right? So when
Yeah.
I tell people we don't edit on Premiere, we edit on Final Cut, but we'll pay you to learn. And it can be hard, I think, when you're bringing on new talent, but anyone that we've brought in that we say, here's Final Cut, here's a course on it, they're all converts and they all love it. So we've got a happy team of Final Cut users here.
That's awesome. You were speaking a little bit towards having to teach video editors Final Cut.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
I was curious. Do you find it's like really easy for them to pick it up as a
Yeah.
tool once they start that learning process? Okay.
Yeah, to me, so I edited on back in the day, I think Postbox, which was a Panasonic program. I mean, I'm aging myself. It was over 20 years ago when I first started, and I used to work in broadcasting. Then we grew up to Avid, and so I was on Avid for several years when I was still working in broadcasting. And I find that if you understand the concepts of editing, how a timeline works, how to put a story together, it's really just a matter of, in general, which buttons do what, So to me, I find that if I can find someone that understands the principles of editing, it's a pretty smooth transition to Final Cut. It's been pretty, I think, mostly easy. It also helps that I'm here in person. So if someone has questions, I'll just sit with them and we'll go through it. But I find that if you know how to edit, it's not a huge leap to make.
Very cool. I wanted to talk for a moment with all of you about the evolution of Final Cut Pro. Uh, I can't believe how many years ago Final Cut 10 was first introduced until it's now called Final Cut Pro. But since then, there's been dozens, if not 20 plus updates to the software with new features, new additions, better, robust media management that Steve was talking about. And I was wondering, Josh, to pick your brain first, when you talk to other users in terms of video editing applications who are using something that's a different application from you, what are some of the misconceptions that they have about Final Cut?
The biggest one is that it's not considered professional software, simply because of just how it looks. That's one of the biggest things. I always get together with a few of my YouTube friends, and I ask them, what are you editing on? Oh, Adobe Premiere. I tell them I edit on Final Cut. They always ask me, Final Cut's not really meant for the pros, switch over to Premiere. And I'm looking at them and I'm like, no, it's just Final Cut just has that, it just has that ease of use and that reliability that, obviously I'm a little biased here, but I just don't think Premiere has that. And that's just the biggest skeptical thing that people have on Final Cut, is that it's not considered professional software. But believe it or not, behind the scenes, a lot more people are switching back over to Final Cut more than you would actually think. So that's probably the biggest thing that people are saying about Final Cut, is that it's not considered professional enough. But we're about to show you how professional it can be.
That's great. And Jen and Steve, I'm curious, feel free to just chime in as well in terms of misconceptions, with whether it be conversations that you've had with potentially some of your viewers, or just the editors and people that you work with in a collaborative workflow.
Well, I think its problem is that it looks like iMovie. And if that's a problem, the thing is about Final Cut is it's deceptively simple on the outside. And what I love about it is that it can grow with you. So if you're just starting out, and like Jen's training her new employees that maybe come from a track-based NLE, once they get the general hang of it, they're going to be storytelling with it. But as they grow in their storytelling capabilities, the app grows with them. Final Cut is kind of known for what I call its progressive disclosure. Everything's hidden until you need it. I love the fact that it doesn't have a noisy interface compared to other apps that just buttons everywhere, windows, panels. It's almost overwhelming. And Final Cut presents this really clean UI. And then when you need something, boom, you got this amazing multicam editor built in. You've got scopes. You've got a caption generator. I can go on, and it's all right there usually within 1 or 2 clicks. And so people don't realize the power that's right there under the progressive disclosure nature of the app. And they just look at it and they judge the book by its cover and say, you know what, this thing isn't pro, which is, until they sit down and actually use it, they'll see that it has every single thing that any other professional NLE has in it, but actually it has something more. The plugin universe for Final Cut is just, next to Premiere, it just dwarfs everything. I mean, there's thousands of plugins out there now that you can put into Final Cut, and there's nothing you can't do with it, is what I'm saying. I can't think of anything that you can't do that limits you with this app.
Yeah, there's so much inside of.
Sorry,
Jen.
I was just going to jump in.
problem.
Steve literally took the words out of my mouth. I feel like when it first was launched, it looked so much like iMovie. It was a turnoff to people. And I myself clung to Final Cut 7 for almost an embarrassing amount of time. I really just, I would open up Premiere and it just didn't feel right to me. And yet I was afraid of jumping to Final Cut 10 because it did look so much like iMovie. And Steve, you are right on about this. It is something that grows with you. And the term, what was it? Progressive disclosure. I've never heard that term, but that is actually the most perfect,
great term.
Perfect description of what it is. Everything's in there. It's just tucked away so nicely. It's almost like IKEA designed the interface. It's like got storage for everything, but you have to open the cabinets to find it. And that is one of the things I really love about it.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
I love
that
IKEA
explanation,
reference.
Steve. Yeah, it's a great explanation. And just to add to some of my own experience, when Final Cut 10 first came out, over the first couple years, I noticed an interesting trend because I was shifting from teaching Final Cut 7 in an in-classroom environment at the time, and then transitioned to Final Cut Pro 10. And there'd be 2 types of users. So user number 1 would be someone moving from Final Cut 7, maybe moving from Avid or even Premiere Pro to learn Final Cut. And I found that the learning curve was about equal in terms of the amount of time that you would spend in a certified curriculum, which would be typically about 3 days at the time. But what was fascinating is if someone didn't have any exposure to video editing in terms of terminology or your classic editing system like Avid or Premiere Pro, they would learn Final Cut incredibly fast. Like a 3-day curriculum could go down no problem into a day and a half. It would just be, it would almost be like they absorbed it. Yeah?
In fact, I have a great idea for Jenn for uh, uh, an episode for her, because I think this would be perfect, right up her alley. I think she should do a video. Jenn, I think you should do a video where you take a couple of people that maybe know Premiere a little bit or Final Cut, and you sit them down and just do a show like, okay, how fast can I teach them on this versus this? And then just give them enough information and see what they can create in a short amount of time. And I've always wanted to do it. I don't know, your personality might be perfect for that, because I think it would just draw people out and people go, wow, I can really create. I don't need a lot of baggage to be able to create something. I think that would be a really fun episode. I'd watch that episode.
I love that. I'm putting that on the list right now. I'm putting that on the list. I do. I love that idea. Thank you.
That's great. I love the idea generation. Jenn, I was curious, with your ear to the ground in teaching both Final Cut and Motion users how to navigate the app, who is, like today, in 2021 and 2022, who is that Final Cut user? What is it that they're, what have you observed about them?
I would say this is just in general across the board because of social media. So many new people are learning just production in general. So to me, a Final Cut user is someone probably who video production is part of their job, but not their full-time job. Somebody who, wants to graduate maybe from like a really simple editing software like iMovie. Maybe they're creating social media content as part of their marketing job, but they want to level up, but they open Premiere and it looks intimidating, I think, and Final Cut just seems a little bit more welcoming at first glance. So for me, I think it's somebody that's more getting into video, who has a little bit of experience, but is looking to grow their skills. Another thing I think is someone like myself, an entrepreneur who looks at the monthly subscription cost of Adobe Premiere and then sees everything that Final Cut can do and can't understand why anyone is paying a subscription fee. I have a friend who uses Premiere and I keep trying to get her onto Final Cut, but she's also a professional photographer and she uses like the whole suite of Adobe products, Lightroom and stuff like that. But I tell her, there's updates. And she says, but how much are the updates? And I'm like, Jessica, they don't cost anything. And she can't believe that I paid $300 10 years ago and I'm still using this software. She cannot believe it.
Yeah.
That is quite incredible that it's $300 flat fee and it hasn't actually changed in the last 10 years. Josh, I'm also curious about your opinion when it comes to this, like of what you've noticed about at least maybe your audience that is a Final Cut user. You're teaching a lot of production-based skills as well. So I'm kind of curious when you get down to teaching about video editing and those who are gravitating towards Final Cut, that portion of your audience, what have you observed?
Most of my audience, a lot of them are still Adobe Premiere users. I've converted a few of them. But the ones that I've converted, I look at my comments every day, especially on the Final Cut Pro tutorial videos. The ones that I've converted to Final Cut Pro, they don't want to go back. Simply because of just, for example, keyframing in Final Cut is ridiculously easy. And just the fact that Final Cut doesn't crash at the same rate that Adobe Premiere does. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing is reliability. Final Cut Pro, if it crashes, it'll probably crash maximum once a month for me. And that's usually because I have other things going on in the background of the, rendering and stuff like that. But there was a 6-month period where I gave Adobe Premiere a try, and it was just an absolute nightmare when comparing it to Final Cut Pro. So reliability is a huge factor. And a lot of people that have switched over to Final Cut completely agree that it's just more of a reliable software. And Apple is just, in my opinion, I think Apple is the most incredible company with not only hardware, but with software. Steve Jobs was always just like killing it with just customer experience and just wanting people to really have their software be a part of their lives. So I think Apple is just like, they know what they're doing when it comes down to software. And that's why I have my faith all into Final Cut, all into Apple, because I just know that they're going to constantly release incredible updates and just incredible upgrades to their machines as well.
That's great to hear about your Final Cut experience, and chiming into some of how the users who are utilizing Final Cut are loving the application. And I wanted to kind of step outside of the Final Cut Pro education bubble for a second and open up a question to Steve in general about production and post workflows and trends that you're seeing this year. Could you speak towards a little bit about what you see in production and post education these days? Who that user who is engaging, whether that be on YouTube or on your site, what are they looking for? What are some of those trends that have appeared in, I guess, the first part of 2022?
Well, I create two types of tutorials: long form tutorials that anywhere from, I don't know, 3 to 6 hours of training. And of course, I create short form tutorials for our YouTube channel. And what I've noticed, and this is just because I believe there's just I don't believe that the data shows there's so much content out there that, people don't have a lot of time. They're very constrained. I'm finding the audience is shifting more towards, I just want to learn this specific thing so I can get my job done. So I need to, let's say, I need to make a lower third, and I don't want to sit through a 20-minute explanation to make a lower third. In fact, the feedback I'm getting from YouTube all the time is like, the tighter, the more focused, the better. Because again, people they're searching, they're Googling, they're saying, I want to learn this, and that's what they watch. I mean, I think there's always going to be a market for long form training, but I think the shift is towards more like bite size, show me what I need to know now so I can I get it done. It's what my friend Philip Hodgett's called knowledge at the point of need. And even like LinkedIn is shifting. I had a conversation at NAB with my friend Rich Harrington, and he said that LinkedIn seems to be even shifting away from these longer form, gargantuan tutorials to more like little focused short things. Now that may be good for me. I'm a trainer. I'll train short, long, doesn't matter. But I'm seeing that people want, just show me what I need to know so I can get my job done.
That's fascinating. And to speak a little bit about LinkedIn Learning, because I have several classes on there as well. It has shifted a little bit to courses in general. What we used to know as essential-based training on LinkedIn Learning, it wouldn't be abnormal to have a 17-hour After Effects class. And that 17-hour After Effects class has now been broken up into 4 classes that are about like 2 to 3 hours long each. So you study different disciplines instead of learning the overall essential training that's there. Essential itself is just less content and straight to the point. And from what I've noticed, the user in general, very similar to what you said, they're searching for almost a need at that moment, and they want you to fulfill that need right away in terms of, let's say, standalone movies or content. Jen, have you noticed kind of something similar when it comes to production and post in terms of what people are looking for? Are there some interesting trends that you're finding?
I mean, I think in general, trends in video production in general are kind of a pendulum swing back to more of a maximalist style. And by that, I mean, there was a trend for quite some time where even big brands were trying to make their content look really raw and, very handheld and DIY. And I think the pandemic kind of kicked that out. Everyone's so sick of looking at that kind of content, right? So I do see, yeah, I mean, it's just everyone wants, I see like even smaller brands, even my own clients are looking for like a bigger budget feel. And I see a lot of like the plugins and templates that I'm seeing marketed are very social media content specific. So I think that content on YouTube, but even shorts, Instagram, everything's just getting like leveled up, which is great. I like that. I think that's great. I don't understand why, I mean, I hate to say it, but like certain brands, for a minute there, I know like KFC, for instance, did an entire campaign years ago where it was all shot on an iPhone 5, So to me, I like the idea that things are going back to, what I like, which is sort of the more professional look.
Yeah, I want to just, if I could just like tag on with something she said, I agree. I mean, I think one of the things, going back to what you said earlier, I think one of the things that does drive Final Cut as an app is, I think these iPhones are amazing now in terms of, the quality. But to Jen's point, I can go out, I can rent a Red camera, or I can rent like a lower end Airy camera with a lens for like, maybe $500 for a weekend. And my stuff instantly looks better than everybody else's because I still know how to shoot in light, but the fact that I can get a camera that they're shooting, Breaking Bad on and rent it for a few days, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I, if I'm going to put the time and energy and resources into, scripting and acting and hiring and do all the stuff that goes into a production, why wouldn't I use the best possible camera? I'm not saying you shouldn't shoot on an iPhone, but I'm saying why wouldn't I?
No autofocus.
They're so accessible.
Yeah.
They're so accessible, those high-end cameras these days. Yeah. Josh, do you find that similar in terms of let's just talk about production workflows with cameras and trends along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Sony user, but yes, okay. I've had experiences with Red cameras. I actually shot a wedding on Red Geminis, and
nice.
That was a mistake. This is like when
the camera overheats.
It wasn't an overheating issue. It was it was like their first gens that literally just came out. I was working with Shane Hurlbutt at the time, and we were shooting a wedding, and yeah, he's cool. And I was changing the shutter angle, and literally the whole camera just froze and shut off. And we were shooting with three Red Geminis. And imagine shooting a wedding, and I was one of, I had, I think it was a profile shot. My camera just shut off on me. And luckily we had two other Reds. One other Red, I think overheated, and then we had one Red just running. So my experience with Red cameras, was kind of like in the beta phase at that time. Wasn't too great, but I still love using professional cameras like that because, again, the dynamic range, the lens choices, and just, there goes a lot behind production. There goes, you need that hardware. Just so it gives, not only the production better value, but in post-production as well, because your editors are going to love you with the more latitude they have that they can play with. And, Red cameras have phenomenal dynamic range, and now the Red Geminis have phenomenal low light capabilities. So it just gives your editor a fresh, a really nice ability to just mess with the footage and give them more latitude. And now Sony, with their alpha cameras, they're upping their game as well. They're not on the status of Red cameras right now, but they're getting there, and they're becoming more and more affordable in a smaller package. So I love it. Yeah, I definitely, I don't like shooting on phones. I don't like it. I don't like it, period. Just because of the auto exposure. And I know there's apps out there that turn your phones into manual mode, but I still just don't like it because the phone it's so smart that it takes away the experience from the actual production. So I like to have full manual control over focus, exposure, and so forth. So yeah, professional cameras all the way. And yeah, that's just my take on that.
I love what you said just there, Josh, about having that extra latitude, especially in post, how long that can go. especially like in terms of being able to color correct, and then not to mention just utilize Mocha for tracking and other tasks. I will say, I think we're kind of in a perfect phase where not only are like these high-end cameras accessible, but there is one thing I do like about, your pocket phone cameras or your 360 cameras, and that is that you have these backups, these secondary cameras that you can use to capture footage in places that your DSLR or larger rig can't. Like, you can purchase 10 iPhones for probably a fraction of a price on a site like eBay, older models like an iPhone 7, and literally just run over that series of phones with your car or whatever it is that you want to do, throw it into water, damage it, and capture probably some pretty incredible content in that process as well. And that idea of being able to use these as an additional or secondary camera for getting into positions or areas that you can't get with your primary camera have me still excited. So I think while not, your primary storytelling capturing device, again, as a secondary device, there's so much potential there.
Oh, 100%. The fact that you can have a camera on you at all times, it's phenomenal. I completely agree. I think even though, I kind of talk smack a lot about, phone cameras, I do use it a lot. But yeah, there shouldn't be any excuses as to why you can't shoot something.
That's right.
I always get emails and DMs, I don't have a camera. What can I do? You have one in your pocket. So yeah, I completely agree. I think phone cameras are getting better and better every year, and even the dynamic range is increasing. But once you go pro, it's hard to go back. Even just having a point and shoot camera, it's just hard to go back to a phone. It's just because of the resolution and just all of that. But yeah, I love the fact that we always have a backup with us at all times. I think it's great.
Cool. We just came out. NAB finished, I think, about a week and a half ago. I was down there. Steve, you were down there as well. Are there I'm curious, Steve, was there anything that you saw in terms of technology that you're excited about for the future?
Right. Well, NAB was all about, it's funny, post-COVID, what all the manufacturers are shifting over to. And the whole message of NAB was camera to cloud, camera to cloud, camera to cloud. You can shoot on your iPhone and upload it to Frame.io so your editors can start working on it. I mean, Atomos had a solution with their Ninja 5s. They had two little ears that you can attach to the Ninja, and it would send up. I think that's great for certain workflow scenarios. I'm not interested in that necessarily because I don't work that way. I'm not shooting out there and uploading to the cloud so my editors can start working on it. I think it's good for some people. But to me, it was all about workflow and cloud stuff. It wasn't super exciting. I'm like, okay, I'm more excited about machine learning than I am about camera to cloud. That was my experience at the show.
Yeah, speaking of machine learning, you'll know in Final Cut Pro 10.62, there's a very simple audio filter that you showed an amazing example of on Ripple Training, Steve, voice isolation, and how it's like leveraging your OS's machine learning capabilities, not to mention the object tracker. It is really exciting to see how that can be integrated into like post workflows. Speaking of which, Jen, I don't know if you had your ear to the ground for NAB, but are there like some cool post-production or production trends that you're excited about?
I was really excited to see Final Cut add motion tracking. I thought that was great. The voice isolation wasn't something I knew I needed until I had it. It was the kind of thing I guess you always wish you had, but I didn't even know how much I wanted it. The only thing that comes to mind for me, and this is not really anything I ever see myself in my career lifetime getting to use, is the demise of the green screen. I don't know if you guys saw, I think it was actually during the pandemic where I think it was Lucasfilms where they're shooting now on these like whole psych video walls and creating these environments that they can just spin around depending on the camera angle that they're shooting inside these studios. And to me, I hate chroma key. I never think it looks great.
Nope.
I hate working on it. So if I'm
Yep.
hoping sometime in my lifetime, I'll be able to have that kind of setup in my studio. I don't know.
Yeah,
Very
I was agreeing. Several people said you got to learn Unreal Engine. That's the next thing. You got to learn how to make virtual sets so that you can put your actors anywhere. And I'm completely on the same page with Jen. I don't like green screen. It looks, most of the time it's done really poorly. But this whole, the idea of making virtual sets and projecting them and matching the lighting that's pretty exciting.
What about you, Josh? In any trends that you're excited about, like in production or post, whether that be like NAB news that just came out, or are you sharing any sentiments with Steve and Jen?
I actually still love using green screens,
Cool.
especially when it comes down to just chroma keying in general. I love doing sky replacements. So I would film, in LA, we always have blue skies literally every day. And it's so blue that it literally acts as a blue screen. So you can literally just key out the blue and put in whatever sky you want. And I've been doing that a lot lately, and I love it. And the cool thing is that, no lighting is required, and it's always like the perfect blue. So it keys out perfectly, and then you just replace it. For a lot of my Instagram tutorials that I've been doing, 60 seconds or less, I've been doing a lot of green screen tutorials. For example, I did one on how to create that ring effect where that person steps out of the TV. That's all green screen, and it came out like really clean. So the one thing with the green screens that I've learned over the last couple of years is that it's all about lighting. That's the thing. When you're chroma keying, it's all about the lighting. And Final Cut, it doesn't matter what software you're using. When you're chroma keying, it's very, very picky when it comes down to lighting, because sometimes you get weird shadows, weird glows, and sometimes the green can reflect off of your skin, so you have to compensate for that. So over the last couple of years, I think I've learned a lot about green screens, and the more and more I use a green screen, the more and more I like to use it. And I know that we're getting rotoscoping into the mix now and all of that. Oh, yeah. Sorry, what was that?
No, I had a question. I mean, you said Instagram. Are you shooting your videos like with your professional cameras like this, so they get the most out of the image sensor? Right, that's what I figured.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, are you shooting in 10-bit as well? So you have all that extra data for your keys?
10-bit. It was rumored that Canon was supposed to come out with a camera with a vertical sensor, but that never happened. Unfortunately, they literally were going to make a camera with a vertical sensor just for social media people. I got excited. I was like, "Whoa, okay, I can have a camera just for Instagram," but no. Now we have to.
Yeah, they're promoting. You know what they're promoting at NAB? A stereo lens. I couldn't believe it. I mean, VR hasn't been talked about for these, but they have this one stereo lens you could put on their R5s and shoot 4K and they had people sitting in a booth with like Oculus or Facebook, and I'm like, wow, they're Canon's pushing this. It was just such an odd messaging. It was so odd to see people lining up to wear like a Quest or whatever Facebook is calling this thing now, Meta, and they're watching this beautiful image down res to less than 2K. And I'm like, what are these guys doing? It was really weird to me.
I can't wait to see the future of 360 video. I mean, because with the 360 cam, you have the ability to shoot widescreen and vertical at the same exact time. They just need to improve the quality. But once that gets to the point where it's like, wow, I think 360 is the future. Because if you can shoot at multiple resolutions at the same exact time, that's insane.
Yeah.
I think that's the most incredible tech in the world, I think.
I think I completely agree with that, Josh, in terms of even just noticing Insta360 was at the show. And while, capturing overall 360 for exporting 360 content really isn't being done that much, 360 storytelling for HD or 4K production is. and they were literally selling a camera, their prosumer lines, every minute on the show floor, and having tons of customers in that 1x2 bracket, which is interesting. And the majority of what these do is that you shoot the content either onto the 360 camera or you shoot it onto your phone and you share it right away. You bypass the post-production process altogether. But I do find that kind of the same way that I find iPhones is, hey, you know, if you have a 360 camera on set as a backup camera to do behind the scenes footage, you know, you capture a frame. These cameras are, again, portable and they can be put anywhere. There's a lot of potential there. I think with those 360 cameras and being able to take them further. But it was interesting to see that. And, you know, speaking of trends at NAB, I still think 360 in terms of an educational tool, even if you don't have glasses on, can be something that you can utilize to create an experience for someone where they, you know, flick around with their finger of a virtual experience, just like a virtual tour. So I've seen that in a few different ways, like software going towards that 360 for education. Cool. Well, guys, I wanted to thank you so much for sharing your insights for like this first part of the webinar. And we're going to be slowly, just to let the audience know, making a shift now to some demos right in Final Cut. I've asked Steve, Jenn, and Josh to share some of their favorite tips for utilizing Final Cut. Not to mention, we'll be talking about 2022. I think now I'll just introduce back in Ben or Brian. I was curious, what did you guys think about this overall discussion? Did anything come up for you?
It's absolutely fascinating. It really is. It's so good, like hearing people who are you know, using Final Cut. I was one of those people who I didn't make the transition. I couldn't make the transition from 7 to 10 back in the day, and I know that there were a few people in the chat who were, you know, sort of in the same boat. But it's really fascinating to me just how far along the software's come. I actually never realized that there've just been, you know, that many updates coming like constantly over the last few years. So you know, maybe it's time that I get Final Cut back in and, you know, try and, you know, spark it up and see what's going on with it again. And I just, yeah, there's so much good stuff that you know, I can't, you know, I don't want to sort of sully the memory of the quality content with my secondary memories of it as well. So what I'm going to do instead is do something that people have been asking for and give them free stuff, if that's okay with everyone. I don't know. It's
okay with me.
Let's give away some stuff, because if you're watching, hopefully by now you'll have popped over to borisfxlive.com to enter our competition to win Continuum FCP. We are giving away 5 permanent licenses of Continuum FCP. So you just head on over to borisfxlive.com, scroll down to the bottom, enter your details in there. Full terms and conditions apply, of course. And you could be walking away with a permanent license of Continuum FCP to go along with your permanent license of Final Cut Pro. And one lucky winner is, of course, going to be walking away today with Boris FX Suite, an annual subscription going for the low price of $12.95.00. So without any further ado, hopefully we have our drum roll sound effect and our first winner. This is going to be a surprise. Who is our first winner? Our first winner is Rama Teru. Congratulations, Rama. You have won Continuum FCP, a permanent license thereof. Congratulations. Yes, we'll be in touch very, very soon to tell you how to claim your prize. And we still have 4 permanent licenses of Continuum FCP to give away throughout the rest of the stream, plus, of course, Boris FX Suite. You can, of course, come in and have a look at what Continuum FCP is all about, and Nick will tell you how you can do just that, won't you, Nick?
I will. Could you repeat the question?
How does everyone get a little taster of Continuum FCP for free?
Yes,
gratis.
Well, you should stick around because we'll be doing a little bit of a Continuum FCP 2022 demo. But with that said, if you are looking for, number one, a free plugin that we have specifically for Final Cut, you can scroll down to the bottom of the page that's being displayed here and download a free trial of Lux, BCC plus Lux. Now, all you have to do is give your email and a little bit extra personal information. But once you download it, you're going to get 80 plus free presets that ship with Lux. This also includes realistic film grain, not to mention some great diffusion effects that are built in to the looks that are provided. And drumroll please, an additional one, you also get Mocha included in this. So Mocha Masking is built into Lux. There you have it. There you have it.
And that's free for everyone. That's not just us giving it away for a few number of people. That's free for everyone. Woo.
Nope. Go there right now and grab Lux and give it a spin. We also have a free trial of the overall Continuum package too. If you look just at the top right of the page there, that little scrolling mouse wheel, just try a free trial and you can download the Continuum 2022 Apple FCP release. So it's currently on 15.0.5 as noted here. Awesome. So without further ado, we have Jenn Jager who's going to show us a few incredible tips inside of Final Cut, not to mention show you a few of the features of Lux which you can download for free. So Jenn, do you have your demo ready to go?
I do. Let me start sharing my screen here. Sorry there. Oops. Hit the wrong button. Okay. Can you guys see my Final Cut screen here?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes,
okay,
we can.
All right. Thank you. All right, so guys, one of my first tip for you guys is to save effects presets. This is something that I use a lot. If you follow me on YouTube at my Jenn Jager Pro Tutorials channel on YouTube, I do a lot of motion tutorials, Apple Motion tutorials. So you can see here in my viewer, this is a screen recording of me working in Apple Motion. And so when I do my tutorials, I like to zoom in way tight into the screen so people can really see what I'm doing, but I don't want to have to keyframe those moves every single time, right? Because I'm often doing the same moves over and over. So what I've done is I have created presets that I save in my effects bin, and it allows me to make those moves just by dragging and dropping an effect. And let me just show you here. Let's say I wanted to zoom to behaviors. I'm just going to drag this effect onto this clip. And you can see here right away, it zooms me right into behaviors, the framing that I want on the screen. And you can see if you look in my inspector window that you can see my keyframes there are marked. Now, in order to do that, let me just reset those parameters to remove that preset. It's really simple. So to create a preset like that, I would just queue up my playhead in my timeline to wherever I want the move to start, set my keyframes on scale and position, run my playhead a little bit further down my timeline, create new keyframes for scale and position, or actually you don't have to do that. You could just change the values, and then move my positions, get the framing that I really want. And I'm just going to make this keyframe linear. All right, so I've got the move that I'm looking for. And what I can do here is head to the bottom of my inspector window and find this button here that says Save Effects Presets, and you get this pop-up window. So what I would do is I would title this Zoom to Behaviors, And then you can see here in my category, it's already in motion tutorial moves. I've already created that category. That category, by the way, is this listing of your effects here in your bin. If you wanted to create a new category, just hit the drop down and select this one here, new category, and you would rename it whatever you want. And then the other thing you need to think about is the keyframe timing. So you can either maintain the timing so that every time you drop this preset onto your clip, no matter how long the clip is, the space between the keyframes will remain the same, the move will remain the same over the same duration of time, or you can stretch to fit. So if I dropped this preset onto a clip that was, let's say, shorter, the move would happen faster. Personally, for me, I always like to maintain the timing. If I wanted to, for instance, leave my shot, let me close this out. If I wanted to leave my shot full screen for longer, I would just use the blade tool to make a through edit. And then I would drop the preset on this second half of the clip here. So for me, saving presets is really such a time saver, something I really love, how easy it is to create these presets in Final Cut. So that is my first tip for you guys. Speaking of motion, my next tip is about opening effects and titles and generators in motion. So you're probably familiar with this one here. This one is the pixie dust text template that comes with Final Cut. If I select this text template, you can see under the title inspector, I cannot change the color of the sparkles. Like these ones are purple. If I use this color picker here, that's actually changing the color of my text, not the sparkles. So you think that the pixie dust title always has these pink sparkles, but that's actually not true. If you head over to your titles and generators sidebar, find the build in, build out category, and then find that pixie dust. What I'm going to do is right click and open a copy in motion. Now I'm going to get the beach ball for a second, I think, of course. Hold on. There it is. Okay, so this is actually the text template here in motion. Now you do need a copy of motion to access this, and Apple Motion is just like Final Cut, a one-time fee, $50. I do a lot of motion tutorials on my channel, so if you want to learn more about motion, I would compare it, let's say, to After Effects, and it does integrate with Final Cut, as you are about to see. Then I would definitely recommend checking that out. $50 one-time cost, and like really does a lot of stuff. So let me find here. These are the purple stars. I want to change the color of these purple stars. So I'm going to select the purple star here in my project pane. If you've never seen this window, if you've never seen motion, there's tons of tutorials, mine and other people's on YouTube. I definitely highly recommend this program. We can head down to filter, color. Let's select, for instance, colorize. And now I can change the color of those sparkles right here in Final Cut. Or excuse me, in motion. And let's say we wanted to make them gold. And now what I do is I head up to File and Save As. And then I can just call this Gold Pixie Dust, for instance. And again, under my categories, I've got a category already created, Jenn's Titles, and I'm going to publish this. And then when I head back over to Final Cut, there we are, and I head over to Jenn's Titles, there it is that we just created. And so now I've got a custom look to this title, and I just did that within a second in motion. So when you see things in Final Cut that you think, oh, I love that, but it's not my client's color, it's not exactly what I want, I wish I could modify that a little bit, you can do it just by right-clicking and opening that element in motion and making those really quick adjustments, and then motion and Final Cut talk to each other, and then you can see the results of your work right in Final Cut. All right, the next tip I have for you is called Add to Audition. So here's just a shot of 3 B-roll shots. And you might see on this top layer, I've got this connected clip here that I've muted. I'm going to turn it on by hitting the V key. If you couldn't decide between these two clips, I'm going to guess this is how a lot of you guys work, where you can see, you know, if you want to hide a clip because you're not sure if you want it, you might just mute it. And then if you decide you like it, you could turn it on with that V key. But there's actually a more professional way to do this that Final Cut has created for us. I'm going to delete that connected clip. What I'm going to do is head back up to my browser, drag this clip over the one in my primary storyline here at the bottom. I'm going to release. And then I'm going to select this guy here, add to audition. You probably know a lot of these other options here, but you're always like, what is this add to audition? I'm going to show you. So I added this new clip to the audition, and I can see this teeny little, looks like a spotlight icon at the top of this clip here. And if I just double click or just single click that spotlight option, you can see I get this pop-up where I can toggle between these two clips. And look at what happens in the timeline. It goes from the boat to the drone shot. And if I change my mind, I could hit done. And now I'm not cluttering up my timeline with a bunch of options. I can put as many clips as auditions in my timeline as I want. This is great if you're the kind of editor who sits with the client and you want to show them the different options that they have for a particular shot. And this is just like a bit of a more professional workflow to, you know, maybe using some shots as a placeholder or when you haven't quite made up your mind. The other great use for auditions, I'm just going to drag in this interview. And so we've got this interview here. I'm going to select this clip, head up to the clip tab at the top of my screen, toggle to audition, and I'm going to select add to audition here. And now when I double click that little spotlight icon, you could see I've got two versions of that clip. What I'm going to do is select the first one, hit done here. And what you can use add to audition for is to change the, like give yourself a couple different color grading options so you can really quickly switch between two different, you know, color profiles and decide eventually which one you prefer. I'm just going to, just for the sake of demonstration, make this one look really different. So we can keep track of which version of this clip is which. I'm going to hit that spotlight and go back to the original. So it's really easy when you're using, you know, trying to decide between two different like color grading styles or effects to save them all as auditions, not clutter up your timeline. And then when you're ready to make a final decision, make a final decision with auditions. And then the last tip I want to show you is, of course, Boris Looks. I was really fortunate to be able to get a preview copy of the Boris Continuum update before it was released, and there were some really exciting things in there that I love playing with. So I do want to show you. I'm just going to show you really quick how it works. We've got this clip here of this woman on a Peloton, and this is what's free from Boris. So I know that Nick mentioned there were some elements that were free, and I'm about to show you the free one, which I think you guys are really going to like. It is this one here, BCC Plus Looks. I'm just going to drag it and drop it onto my clip, and then I'm going to expand upon it in the inspector window. And the first thing I want to do is hit this FX editor button. You see it here. I'm going to click that, and a new window is going to open up. And so these are all of the 80 plus looks that Nick was talking about that are free with this one effect. So Continuum has a lot of different things, and there are a couple other things I'm going to touch on, but all of these are free, and they do come with the Mocha tracking that I think you're going to get a demo on later on. So in this particular instance, I'm going to select this one here, transparency. Now, one thing I do want to mention is when you see some of these effects and you're like, wow, that's really affected, I don't know whenever I would use that. Once you apply the look here in the FX editor, when you go back into Final Cut, there's a lot of customization you can do. So this just shows you like the fullest mix, let's say, of the looks, but you can make a lot of like tweaks to it once you get back to Final Cut. I'm going to select transparency. I'm just going to hit apply. Oh, hold on. There was one other thing. I'm sorry, you guys. There was one other important thing I wanted to show you. So I've selected transparency. There's a few different looks here so you can see a before and after of your video clip. So this top one here is the one with the look applied. This down here is the original. The other view you can take of this, and I like this one, I don't know why, I just think it's fun, is there's a slider. So you can really see like the transformation. And there's like a vertical slider as well. So you can go up and down with it as well, whatever your preference is. So I just wanted to point that out for you guys. I'm going to hit apply. And now I've got my look applied. And then over here in my inspector window, there's all of that customization that we talked about. You could add like a little gradient to the top and warm this up even more. I think that looks nice. It looks like she's cycling in the morning here. And then that is what is free with Boris. But I do want to show you something else from the Continuum suite of effects that I just really love. I'm going to go to this one here, BCC Looks, and I'm going to drop on this lens flare. I feel like I just have to show you guys this because for me, of all the lens flare effects that I've ever worked with from any company, this one has been my absolute favorite. I just feel like it's so easy to change the angle of this lens flare, and I just think it looks so realistic. Let me head over to my inspector window, and you can even change like the color of the lens flare. You can add a flicker, which I really like, and I just think this lens flare is just really good looking, really natural looking, and really practical and useful. It just adds a little zhuzh to your projects. One other thing I just want to show you is with this starfish shot. So this is just the, I got the shot off of ArtGrid. This is how it comes. But I used the looks, one of the free looks from Boris, but I also did the Mocha mask tracking with it, which, like I said, I believe you're getting a demo on later. So, and it, it takes a minute, so I'm not going to take the time right now, but you should definitely stay tuned for that. But this is what I did with this starfish using the Mocha tracking. And so I just applied a look to this clip and then use the mask tracking feature to cut out this starfish. And so the starfish has this like great vibrant look, but the sand still looks like sand. It doesn't look tinted. And I'm just thrilled with the looks and Mocha tracking. I feel like it's a bit of a game changer and just a really great workflow. So I'm loving this whole Continuum suite, but definitely grab the free stuff because it's amazing and you can do a lot with it. So you guys, those are my tips. And let me stop screen sharing. And I hope you guys learned something new. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everybody here.
Thanks so much for sharing, Jen, especially that I love auditions. I think they're actually not used up to their full potential in terms of Final Cut Pro, and then just showing how you could use them with effects, but also different interview clips. I use them all the time in certain cases when putting together content with the voiceover, the built-in voiceover feature, and how it creates those auditions. It really does help not clutterize your timeline by providing you a container where you can easily switch between all of those auditions by using keyboard shortcuts. And yeah, you can't go wrong with $50 in Motion. It literally is like, in some ways, your gateway to Final Cut. And the potential of what you can do with effects and transitions, and like as you showed, taking titles to the next level by changing some of those colors. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Awesome. I know, Josh, you have something prepared too. You're next up in terms of some Final Cut tips to share and that you utilize for. So if you're ready, we can go right in and.
Hang on.
Oh,
Nick.
wait,
no.
I'm jumping ahead. Am I not?
No one's stealing my thunder. Come on. Here I am. I want to give away more stuff. Come on.
Okay, you can give away more stuff. I'll let you do it.
Thank you. It's the only reason I'm here. That's it. No, that's great, Jen. There was actually a ton of love happening in the YouTube chat as well for that. Like so many really, really nice tips. So yeah, let's keep those questions in the comments coming then, please, everyone. If you'd like to actually hear more from Jen and Nick. They, as I said earlier in the thing, we have a Boris FX podcast, which is hosted by Nick, called Flow State. Stories from the creative process. And I'm sure Nick will talk about it a little bit more later. But on one of the big episodes that we had, there was a really nice section with Jenn talking about creativity. So that's awesome. So check out Flow State, borisfx.com/podcast. All right, so let's give away some more stuff. I've been wanting to give away more stuff. We have another license of Continuum FCP. It is a permanent license to go along with your permanent Final Cut license. So the next winner is, drum roll, a blank screen. Oh no, it's Diana Jenkins. Congratulations, Diana. You are our winner, and even better than a blank screen. Well done, Diana. We'll be talking to you very, very soon about how you can claim your license. But in the meantime, if you haven't already done so, head on over to borisfxlive.com. Scroll to the bottom of the screen, enter in your details, and you could still have a chance to win either Continuum FCP or Boris FX Suite today. All right, I've given away some stuff. Let's head back over to Nick and Josh. Let's see what you've got.
I just got really excited about all of these Final Cut tips, Ben, so apologies for jumping a little bit forward before giving away those prizes. But Josh, I know that you also have some tips to share with Final Cut and how you use it. I'm so excited to see it. So let's hop in and see what you have.
Awesome. All right, so here is my Final Cut Pro timeline. So this is one of the companies I work with. They're called Razvani. They make really cool apocalyptic looking cars. And so I just want to show people right now like how to fix really bad filming mistakes. So this is a color graded clip, and straight out of the camera it looked something like this. Okay, I don't understand why. I think my color balance was completely off, or white balance was completely off when I shot this, but this car is supposed to be red. So what happened was I had the owner of the company text me, and he was like, dude, the car is supposed to be red, right? I was like, oh, damn. Okay, how do I fix this? How do I replace the orange with red? Well, first of all, this was shot in log. So, I had to fix all of the log, but I want to show you really quick how to replace colors. So this is already color corrected to get rid of that flat log looking profile. Now what we just got to do is replace the orange with red. Okay, so this is not the original color of the car. It's supposed to look really shiny and red. Okay. So really easy, in Final Cut, this takes literally a minute. All you have to do is select the clip. We're gonna go to the color corrector here. We're gonna add a hue saturation curve, and hue basically means color. All we really have to do is go to hue versus hue, select the eyedropper tool, and then we're just gonna select the color on the car, which is orange. We're just gonna select a little sample right here, and it's automatically gonna show you what that color is right here in this graph. And all we have to do to change the color of the car is adjust the slider. Look at it, you can literally change it to any color, but you have to be careful because any other color that matches that color in the frame will also change. But to bypass that, you can also add a mask. So with masking, you can really do anything that you want, which is why I was so excited that Boris FX came out with masking with tracking in Mocha. So literally you can change this color, to pink. Ooh, pink looks really nice. But, I had to leave it around this color, which is more of a red, which is more of what that color originally looked like. And that's how I fixed my mistake when filming this video. It was a very amateur mistake. I think I was just like too excited or too tired wanting to go home. I don't know. but you know, you can literally do a lot. This was shot with the Sony a7S Mark III, so you get a lot of latitude with that 10-bit color. If this was shot in 8-bit, it would have been a little bit more difficult to fix and isolate colors. So I'm glad that this camera gave me that ability to change colors, and Final Cut just makes it so simple. So basically you can go back to your effects tab here, deselect it, and you can see the difference between the orange and the red, and basically the log and the final result. And to add a little bit more pop to this shot, what we can do, we can go to color board, and we can adjust the exposure. We're going to bring down the blacks right here and really make that car stand out. You can adjust the sliders here a little bit, but look at that. If you adjust the contrast by bringing down the shadows, wow. I mean, you really make this car pop. And after I sent the owner of Rizvani this, he was much happier. You know, I sent him the more, you know, original looking color of the car. It was not orange, so that was a little embarrassing at the time. But the fact is that even with probably some of the worst mistakes you make in filming, you can fix this in editing. So that's why I think that, you know, these little tricks are just so important to know, because you know, I'm not always the best at filming. Sometimes I overlook certain settings in the camera, and boom, there you go. You fixed your mistake right there. Next, I want to talk about some cool audio fine-tuning that Final Cut offers. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up the audio here between these two clips. And sometimes, you know, I'm very paranoid when it comes down to hard cuts in audio. And whenever I want to switch between two clips, the audio can sometimes make these popping noises depending on how hard or, you know, how tight the cut is. And, you know, if you go frame by frame, you can extend the clip, shorten the clip. That's great. But Final Cut offers a really cool fine-tuning adjustment when it comes down to cuts. And all you have to do is double click within the two clips that you want to edit, and you can make the finest of fine-tuned cuts with audio. Like, this is something that I absolutely love. And that's what's gonna help you get rid of those popping sounds that you sometimes hear when you do really quick hard cuts between two clips. So the fine-tuning is just super important. And the more you zoom in, the more fine-tune of an adjustment you can make. You can literally go frame by frame. It's so much easier using this tool right here within Final Cut Pro rather than just working within the original timeline. And once you made that edit, once you made that fine-tuned cut, all you have to do is double click again and it goes right back to the original timeline. So that's something that I actually discovered by accident. I was just clicking around the timeline one day and I was like, whoa, what is this? So that's really cool. That's actually another reason why I love Final Cut so much, is because the more accidents you make messing around with effects, the more you learn about the software. It just makes everything so simple and easy. And yeah, that's just another reason why I love Final Cut. The next thing that I want to talk about here is creating more storylines. And for those of you who are, you know, starting to transition over to Final Cut, or you're new to Final Cut, a storyline is basically a magnetic timeline. This is something that used to be very popular, and for some reason people stopped liking magnetic timelines. But when it comes down to organization and just making cuts and making sure that your clips stay in the same order, I think magnetic timelines are extremely important. So within Final Cut Pro, you have your main track right here, which is already a magnetic timeline. So if I were to, let's say, delete this clip, everything else would move over, and the timing, the order of the clips would stay the same. But what happens if, you know, if you bring a clip, let's say, up above the main timeline, or above the main track, like let's say if we do lift above storyline and we do that to this one here, you know, if we delete this track, nothing happens. If we want to have a whole collection of tracks above the main storyline, what we can do, actually, let me actually go back here. We can add multiple storylines, so we can add multiple magnetic timelines, and this is really good To make my life simpler, let me just add a duplicate of this. And sometimes you want to have that ability to just have everything snap back into place, just so it makes your life so much easier when it comes down to reorganizing clips. So let's say if I deleted this clip, you would notice that nothing snaps back into place. So if we want that ability, all we have to do is just highlight all of these clips, right click, create storyline. Now this basically becomes one big magnetic bunch of clips. So if I were to delete something in the middle, it would automatically readjust and snap back into place. So that is something that I use a lot. As you can see, this is the original edit that I have right here. I used multiple magnetic timelines here, or storylines, and this helped me a lot with editing, especially when it comes down to transitions. It will automatically snap your transitions back into place, which I really like. So that's something that I use all the time when it comes down to editing. And yeah, I also just wanted to talk a little bit about Mocha Masking with BCC. This is something that I was extremely, or still am extremely excited about within Final Cut Pro, because Final Cut Pro came out with object tracking, which is great. It works really fast. But let's say you want to isolate a specific subject and you want it to be tracked, and you want it to add a special color grade to it and have the color grade follow that subject. This is where Mocha really becomes one of the most powerful tools you can use. This is something I've been begging for Final Cut to include. But Boris was like, all right, let's do it. Let's add Mocha into Final Cut Pro. And they did it very, very well. So this is really going to open up a whole different universe for Final Cut Pro users, because the fact that you can isolate a subject and just add multiple effects to the subject and have the subject move throughout the frame and have that effect follow it, I think that's mind-blowing. So I'm really excited to see what Boris does with this. And you're literally turning Final Cut Pro into a bunch of different software. You're turning it into After Effects. You're turning it into Motion. I mean, you're turning Final Cut, by itself is just a simple video editing platform. But with these options now that we're getting with Mocha, you're really converting it into a beast, an absolute beast. The overall goal for a video editor is to just make things as simple as possible. You don't want to be going from one program to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. It's good to just stay within one window so you can be completely focused on that project without having to bounce from one software to the next. And I think with Mocha, you get that ability to just really focus on one thing, and that way it will make your life so much easier and more efficient. So I'm really excited about Mocha and what the possibilities are with that.
Awesome, Josh. I can't wait to see, the last time that we chatted a webinar several months ago now, it was at that time I had known that Mocha Masking was coming to Final Cut, but couldn't tell you anything. And just hearing how much you use masking and, manual tracking in your own work, I'm like, we can't wait to get this in your hands, because it sounds exactly like what you need. And even seeing some of the examples you showed just now in your demo of how you need to change the color of a car sometimes if your camera settings are off, what that could potentially do to your workflow of moving shots. That's really exciting. And
yeah,
on another note, I want to thank you so much about your
oh yeah, I was just gonna say how excited I am.
Yeah.
Like yeah. Anyway,
that's awesome. And no, I wanted to thank you as well for sharing your tips there. I always find that to have that magnetism, especially above with any connected clips, and like what you said, if you don't know if you're lifting things from the storyline and they're sort of spread out above the primary storyline, to have them in a container, to have them in a secondary storyline, to be able to move them around flexibly, just like your primary storyline, is a huge advantage, along with those precision editing tricks.
I use it all the time. I've never complained about a magnetic timeline before, because I just thought it was extremely efficient. I believe, I don't remember with Sony Vegas because it's been such a long time, but I think Sony Vegas also had the ability to do a magnetic timeline, and I used it a lot and I really liked it. And Adobe Premiere doesn't really have that. So I was, when I started using Final Cut Pro, I was like, yes, magnetic timeline. I love it. I could understand why some people get agitated at times, because when you delete certain clips, other clips can be deleted. For example, like audio clips that are not within the magnetic timeline, if they don't match up with that clip, they can automatically be deleted. But if you're making a lot of intense cuts and trims, you actually start to see the real benefit of a magnetic timeline, because it just keeps everything organized. And that's what you want. You don't want things to be out of place. And once clips start going out of place, it becomes very difficult to track what's out of place and what's not in, what's out of place and what's in place. So I love the fact that we get that ability within Final Cut, and I just think it makes efficiency and workflow so much better, and it saved me a few times actually. So I'm happy that magnetism is still here.
You remind me of like Final Cut 6 and Final Cut 7, where they had mechanisms to try to identify, the potential of you leaving gaps in the timeline. It would be very common when you exported a piece, let's say for review, that you would have a flash frame, and the magnetic timeline is really there to prevent that. I think Steve said this a bit earlier too, of not only is the Final Cut interface much more simplified, but it's much more visual. And the fact that you can work within the browser, looking in film strip view, all of your content, it's a lot easier to edit and assemble clips into your project than maybe it used to be in older workflows, where you would go into an editor's office, and what they might do is like drag all of their clips into the project or sequence and then start to assemble it there. And all of the clips that they weren't sure about, they would, have this empty space on a track and have it way down in their timeline, like 2 minutes down, where they would make selections and they would put it in. But if you're, I think if you're used to the Final Cut workflow and you do your majority of trimming within the browser or even within list view, you have a great workflow set up there with the magnetic timeline to keep your project together and from some of those errors from happening on export, which were common in the past.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of people just don't understand the magnetic time. Like, if you haven't been using Final Cut, I understand. But once you use it for a week or two, you really start to see the benefits of a magnetic timeline. I love it. No complaints here. Sometimes you do delete some clips that you don't want to delete, but that's what the undo key is for, right? So yeah. This adds to the UI, the ease of use to everything, and I will never be going back to any other software because of it.
Josh, thanks so much for sharing your tips and tricks and having that conversation about Mocha Masking. I know, Ben, I think we have another prize to give away, if I'm correct. Yes? Yes.
Let's see if I can open up my bag of prizes and see what I can find. Yes, we do. That is absolutely correct. Josh, thank you very much. Again, tons of love in the chat as well. Just so much like great little tips and tricks coming through. It's really wonderful to hear all these all these small little tricks that are there just to help brighten everyone's day. But do you know what else brightens people's days? Free stuff. So let's give away our next copy of Continuum FCP. It's a permanent license of a $295 value going to Phaleg Pages or Phaleg Pages. Yes, thank you very much, Phaleg. Congratulations. You are our next winner. You're our third winner of Continuum FCP. We will be in contact with you very shortly about how you claim your prize. We've given away 3 licenses. That means we still have 2 to go. So if you haven't done so already, head on over to borisfxlive.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, enter in your details to win. Full terms and conditions apply. Not only do you have the chance to win one of the 2 remaining copies of Continuum FCP, there is also the big boy as well. the Boris FX suite, annual subscription, a $12.95 value. So that's still to come. So hang on there with us. And it's going to be easy to hang on because we're going to be seeing Steve's tips and tricks as well. I want to thank Steve while I have him online because he also just like Nick, he also helped me with his Ripple training back in the day when I was learning and a new person to things. I was like, this is what we can do. All right, so without any more of my nonsense, over to Nick and Steve.
Yes, Steve, I'm super excited to see. I know you've prepared some tips as well. Some of your favorite ones from your hat of over, I'm sure, hundreds, if not thousands. Are you ready to go? Shall we go for it?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's do it.
Let's see. Toggle screen sharing. All right. See here. Let's see. All right. Are you seeing my screen?
Mm-hmm.
You see it?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody's all right.
There
good.
We are.
Yeah, I wanted just to follow up to what Josh was saying about Final Cut, and Thomas Grove Carter once said, like, you don't get it until you get it, and then once you get it, you're never going to go back. So I thought I'd start, and then Josh started with a mistake in production, and I thought that would be kind of, I'm gonna switch up the order and talk about a production mistake that I had to deal with. So like here's I did this filmmaking class here where I live in Arizona, and I did a promo for it, a 2-camera shoot. And so I have the camera 1, Blackmagic camera 2 is a Sony A7, but notice this is take 2, this is take 1. This doesn't happen to anyone, right? We didn't press record on the B camera, so we had take 2. So we ended up with just one take for this for the A cam. So one of the ways that I could deal with this is to make 2 angles out of a single angle in Final Cut Pro using the multicam. Final Cut's multicam editing tool, I think, is the best, most intuitive, most elegant. I just keep going on with adjectives about the multicam tool in Final Cut. But so I have this A cam and I want to turn it into 2 angles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both of these and right click and choose new multicam clip. And here's the key. Now, before I didn't mention this, the key to this working is shooting in 4K or UHD and then putting it in a 1080 timeline, which is, or a multicam clip, which I'm going to do here. This gives you the ability to, scale up 4 times, the amount and not lose resolution. So I'm going to do 1080. I'm going to just call this Steve intro. And I'm just going to use these automatic settings and this use audio for synchronization. By the way, if you have an M1 Mac, this is so fast now. The synchronization, you can have a 30-minute, 20 angles. I don't mean it's extreme, but man, this thing is fast now on an M1 Mac. Yeah. So, okay. So it synchronizes. I get my multicam intro here. I'm going to open this up into the multicam, right? And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press, let's see, I'm going to turn on my angles so we can see my angles here. And I got my viewer there, angle 1. And now what I would recommend you do before you make the second angle is you do any corrections first. Like, for example, maybe I don't like the fact that I can see the boom kind of peeking out of the bottom of this top of this frame here. So what I'll do is I'll write it and go, create a crop, and I'll just grab the little crop tool and I'll just kind of pull this down and just click done. So I've already cropped out the boom. That's the first thing I'll do. The next thing I'll do is I'll go into the info inspector and I'll select extended, and I'm going to apply a LUT to this. So right now, well, it looks already have one applied, but in this case, the Blackmagic's 4K. And I might jump into the color board, Command 6, And maybe I'll jump in exposure and I'll just bring the mids way down, and I'll boost this up. I find this is really important before you actually create your other angle, to get the grade the way you want so it matches when you create the second angle. So I got that looking the way I want. Now I go back over here, and under this caret next to angle 1, I'm just going to say add angle. So I've now this angle here. Now here's the thing, you want to make sure that you're using the position tool, which is usually the default tool for multicam. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to option drag it down here, but you're going to want to have snapping on. You're going to see why in a second. Option, and I'm going to drag down. And the reason you want to see this is that you have alignment guides, which will help you keep the perfect registration of those two angles so they'll be perfectly in sync with each other. Even the tooltip tells me I'm at 0 value, which means it's an exact registration with the angle above it. So I'll do that, and then, you know, go ahead and name this angle close up. I mean, look, it's two angles. Probably don't need to name it. I know what they are. So I got these two angles. The next thing I want to do is, with the angle selected, go back to the inspector and locate the scale all. And by the way, I want to see the monitoring angle. There's a little button here. You need, in order for me to see the output of this angle, I got to click this little button here called the monitoring angle, which sends that frame to here. And now I'm going to just grab the scale. I'm just going to go and scale it. You could scale up to 200% without losing resolution. You know, that'll start getting soft. And now I'm just going to just drag this down like that. Maybe, you know, bump it over a little bit. I'm just trying to create the perfect framing. And looking good. So what I'm going to do now is just jump back. Actually, I need to create the project now. So I'm going to right click, create a project, make sure it's a 1080 project. Let's call this Steve. Click OK. So now I have my multicam clip in here. What I'm also going to want to do is set the switching up so I'm starting with the audio, and then switch to video only switching so that I can switch between. I can cut between the wide version and the close-up of myself from one angle. So I basically created this nice little multicam edit here. Now you're not going to be able to hear it, but I'm just going to start with angle 1 and then cut to angle 2. Cut 1, 2. Oh, let's do some flutter cutting, whatever. Point is, I took that mistake and I took lemons and made lemonade out of it. In the multicam clip container. So that's my first clip. And this is the kind of I do a lot of multicam editing, and this is a great little thing that's nice to add to your bag of tricks. All right, cool. So the next thing I want to show you, and we've been talking a lot about social media. You know, Jen was mentioning, gosh, it's an explosion. Everyone's posting stuff online, YouTube, Instagram, vertical, not vertical. And one of the things that Final Cut added not too many versions back was the ability to use, machine learning to create different output resolutions. In fact, let me just open this up here. So here's my niece, and she's a big Instagrammer, and she has this dog, and everyone loves her dog. Wherever we go, everyone loves this dog, Dozer. And she wanted, that's a YouTube version, and she wanted an Instagram version in vertical. So I'm going to show you how to output two versions at the same time. And by the way, I wish I had time to talk about the power of captions in Final Cut. They're so easy, and everybody should be captioning their video now, because a lot of people aren't even listening videos now. They're just watching them in noisy environments. Anyway, that's an aside. So this one's going to be my HD output. In fact, I might even name this Promo HD. Now here's the secret sauce. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to choose duplicate project as. That's the important one. It's as, because you're going to take that same project and you're going to give it a different format and resolution. So I'm going to choose vertical, and then you choose resolution. You can do up to 2160 by 3840. I'm going to just do 1080 by 1920. 30p. And just so I know what this is, I'm just going to type in the word vertical at the end. And here's the secret sauce. This right here, smart conform. I'm a big proponent of machine learning. I want to see even more machine learning in Final Cut. I think there's so much could be done. I could, wind me up and talk to me about what I think machine learning can be in Final Cut. There's just so much potential. But here's machine learning in that what's going to happen is I click OK, is what Final Cut's going to do is going to go through every single clip in my timeline and look at the image and try to figure out what the center subject is and automatically frame them vis-a-vis this new vertical dimensions. And it does it all through machine learning. So if I open up this project, you'll notice that where it did its best to like keep her completely centered in the frame with pretty much no input from me, the human. And what's nice is that, well, you can see sometimes it gets it wrong. So if I turn on transform, I want you to see this. What's actually happening is with the transforms, you can see what the AI did. So like here, it just moved the frame over. It figured out where the subject was and moved it over here. Over here, the subjects. See, what's nice about this is then if I need to make some slight adjustment in the framing, I just move it over. It's just super simple, and I can even keyframe stuff that wasn't right. So like maybe she's coming in here, I may keyframe the position, and then because she's walking in the frame, maybe to there, I can now, because I got that first keyframe set up, I'm just gonna, all I really need to do is, because the first keyframe, and I'm just gonna hold the shift key to constrain the movement along that axis there. And now I have a really quick animation, where the vertical framing tracks with her. So really, really a wonderful way of using machine learning to do something that would normally take a lot of time. All right, so that's my second tip. Third tip, timeline index. Now the timeline index is unique to Final Cut Pro. And I say that when Final Cut came out with a timeline, when Apple came out with timeline index, no other editing software had a timeline index. And I find it really curious and interesting now that everybody's has a timeline index now. Premiere, Resolve, they all have timeline index. And it's kind of funny to me, because if Final Cut's like not pro, then why are all these pro apps putting stuff that they used to think was very, consumery back in the day? I don't know. That's just an aside. But so yeah. Apple actually had some really good ideas, and this was one of them, the timeline index. So I have this index, and one of the things about it is it's a list of every single asset in your timeline, by time code. You just click and your playhead jumps there, it selects, and it's just fantastic. And so you can even search by things. So let's see here. I type in the word cross, and what just came up? Every single cross dissolve that I put in, and this is what the other, as far as I know, don't do yet. Well, I'm going to select these three cross dissolves. Maybe I want to replace them with another transition. I'll open a transition. Oh, look, BCC transitions is here. What a coincidence. I'm going to take this. Let's see here. This lens flare dissolve, and I'm just going to double click it. Boom, boom. And just like that, every single one of my transitions that I selected in the timeline index become replaced with that new transition. Huge time saver. All right, here's one other thing that I like the timeline to use it for. This has never happened to you either, right? You delivered. I know Jenn's worked in broadcast. It's happened to me. I work for an ad agency, and stuff would go out and no one would take the time to check the Chiron to make sure that things were actually spelled correctly. So here you have our client, Quintessa. It produces like high-end wines, and like you can't spell our vineyard properly. It has two S's in it, right? So if I go to titles, you can see I have a list of the timeline index. Allow me to select, hit spacebar, check the title, go to the next one, hit spacebar, check the title, go to the next title, hit spacebar, check the title. I love this fact that I can quickly check my titles before I output. It's way faster than skimming. So here I have, that's obviously wrong. So what's nice is I can go up to the edit menu and go down and choose find and replace title text. So here I'm going to type out the wrong one, Quintessa, 1S, and I'm going to replace that with Quintessa, 2 S's, replace all, boom. Now, because I have these titles, and I can quickly check to make sure, oh, 2 S's. Let's go to the next one. 2 S's, good. Last one. 2 S's. Oh my gosh, that took so much work. That was so hard. So this is just 2 of the ways that I use the timeline index for my work in Final Cut Pro 10. So those are my 3 tips, my friends.
Wow,
So
that find and
Steve,
replace is such a lifesaver. Wow.
yeah. When you shared me this
Yes.
list of your tips yesterday, I was like, oh, I've never seen the multicam workflow, which is awesome. I've never actually thought to work with clips in that way, like the same clip. So thank you for sharing that, because that's a fantastic workflow. But now, after you've done your 3 tips, the one thing that did blow me away, because I did not know, was your transition tip with the timeline index. Like, that blew me away. The basically selecting and replacing it through the timeline index. I've never seen that. So that was awesome. Yeah.
And I replaced it with cool transitions.
You did. I like it. And speaking of which, I love the lens flare, the transitions that you added them with. Like, you've had some chance to play and see Continuum FCP. I was curious, is there something in that package that's exciting for you that you see yourself using?
Yes, I definitely will see myself using the film looks. And I agree with Jen. I love the lens flares. I think they're elegant and they're nice. They're easy to apply. They're easy to modify. The Mocha, the tracking, I haven't had a chance to play a lot with it, but I think one of the things the points that need to be made about that tracker, and this is really important, is that the Final Cut, they get confused. People don't know the difference between trackers, because Final Cut uses an object tracker. It's just random, it's tracking pixels, where your tracker is a planar tracker. It's actually, it's tracking along like perspective, and it's doing it very accurately. Plus, you could take the pen tool and you can draw specific shapes like Jen did with the starfish. I can't do that in Final Cut. There is no tool. It's either a circle or a square, and you can have any shape you want as long as it's a circle or square. But it's good for what it is. It really is. So I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm saying it's good to have a really good tracking tool that where you can create shapes with a pen tool and then modify them.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, Steve, because one of the things that makes me excited is sort of the combined workflow that you can have in Final Cut now with Continuum FCP. Like the object tracker for itself, for having titles, point tracked or object tracked to a specific region or part of your image is fantastic. But then combining that with Mocha Masking and all of the effects you have with Continuum FCP or just looks, just provides an overwhelming amount of opportunity and possibility for your productions. And that combination of using, in some cases, both, or, in going into those examples of adding production value with Mocha where the object tracker can't get you there, provides you with a lot of potential solutions. So I love that. And as a video editor, I'm always someone with the hat of, I want to add motion graphics to video, but I only have a certain amount of time to dedicate towards motion graphics and VFX. And if it goes beyond that time, I would have to then outsource it. So I always like to think to myself, what as a video editor can I do in 15 minutes to add more production value to the client? And I think Mocha in some cases checks that box, is that you can set up some pretty incredible tracking, like complicated tracks, very easily within like 15 minutes, and just add that extra production value to your piece and combine that with all of the tools that you're using.
Yeah. It's funny, like one other comment I'd like to make about Final Cut, and I was thinking about it as Jason was talking. For a phone, we'd always say there's an app for that. But for Final Cut, I'll say there's a plugin for that. I mean, it's like I said earlier, there's nothing that you can't do with it.
Yeah, it's quite a deep ecosystem when you think about all of the things that you have available for you inside of Final Cut and inside of Motion. Um, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank all three of you for your incredible demos. I learned something from each one of you. I always do when I watch your videos, but it's even better to do it live during a webinar. And thank you so much for your time and sharing this with the Boris FX community and the Final Cut community. So, Jenn, Josh, Steve, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing those tips. Again, I always learn something from you, and you offered so much value in that discussion. So I really appreciate that. And I think all of the viewers and listeners here do so as well. I've been chiming into a little bit of that chat. So thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
for having us.
Yeah. It was fun.
Awesome, guys. And just to let you know, some of the stuff that we're talking about here, the audience with Continuum FCP 2022, as well as Looks, you can download Looks for free right now by just simply heading to the Boris FX website. At the very bottom of the Continuum FCP page is your ability to go there and download it by giving us your email and some personal information. That's going to include Mocha. And then we also have the overall Continuum FCP package, which I, in a few minutes, am about to demo. But you could demo and try that out and see some of the effects and transitions that we've been showing and talking about during the demos that just passed. Now, before I hop into the portion of showing you guys Continuum FCP 2022, Ben, do we have another prize to give away?
We do. I've got it here in my bag of prizes. There we go.
I love it.
Yes, we do. We're still giving away some free stuff, as we like to do during these live streams. If you haven't entered the competition, there is a very, very short amount of time to do so. Just head on over to borisfxlive.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page, enter your name, email address, and where you are living, and then you can enter our competition. Full terms and conditions also apply, and you can have a little read of those while you're there. But before we do that, let's see what people could win. Yes, we are still have a couple of permanent licenses for Continuum FCP, and our big prize, which is a 1-year subscription of the Boris FX suite. So that's going to one lucky winner. So still a little bit of time to win that. So heading over to borisfxlive.com now. Alrighty. So let's see who's going to be getting the next permanent license of Continuum FCP. Drum roll, please. It is going to Vina Sarah. Vina, congratulations. You have won a permanent license of Continuum FCP. We know where you live. We know how to find you. We will find you soon and tell you how you can claim your new copy of Continuum FCP. That is not a threat. That is a promise. And somehow I just made it worse. All right. If you haven't won so far, obviously, as Nick said, we're moving past that really quickly. If you haven't won so far, as Nick said, just head on over to the borisfx.com website, go and have a little look at the Continuum FCP page, and you can download Boris FX BCC plus Looks for free for Final Cut today. So everyone can do that right now. But actually, maybe not right now, because we're going to head back over to Nick, and Nick is going to show you why you might want to work with Continuum FCP. Nick, take it away, please.
Yes,
please.
I think it's demo. I think it's demo time, Ben. So I'm going to show you guys a few things of what's new in Continuum FCP. We're going to hop inside of Final Cut. Let's give this a little screen share. Does everyone see my Final Cut screen? Okay.
Indeed, we do. It's looking great.
Excellent. So, Continuum FCP 2022, some of the things just to keep in mind is now that we have Mocha Masking integrated in every single video effect. And there are quite a few video effects that ship with Continuum. One way to get familiar with all of these effects when you download the whole package is when you go to the effects browser, just do a search for BCC. and you'll see all 101 items of those effects show up. So quite a few for you to get used to. And I recommend when you go across some of the effects and transitions that I'll be covering to try to get familiar with being able to play with some of these effects and transitions and sort of discover what's possible. But there are quite a lot that you can do with these things. And in fact, I'll show you even going a bit further with some of the effects that both Steve and Jen shared with you. I'm going to clear this search for a second and actually head to the BCC Lights category. I want to start my story with a new effect here. It's BCC Light Leaks. And like with any effect in Final Cut, in the effects browser, you can skim to get a preview of it. Now, these effects, as we saw with looks, several of them have multiple presets to get us started. So once I apply the effect to the clip, I'll head over here to the inspector, and I'm now going to click on the effects editor badge. That, just like Jen showed, is going to launch a separate window, effects editor here. And so you guys can see me now inside the effects editor. And I want to draw your attention to the left. Light leaks, John Dickinson actually created just over 10 Light Leaks presets that are available for you to get you started with some of the styles here. Now, Light Leaks, there are several packages online where you can download these as clips and then play around with blend modes. But if you're looking for a little bit of extra control to apply to titles and motion graphics, then this Light Leaks is definitely for you. You can simply try some of these presets, all with various strengths applied to them, and also do some before and after comparisons. So just to highlight a bit more of what Jen touched upon earlier, I can do an A-B comparison. So here's my original clip, and here's the existing effect. But I can also mix a screenshot into the mix. So if you click on this little camera icon here at the top, and let's go and switch the preset to a different one. Now I have, this is the current preset selected, but I also have access to the actual other screenshot down here. So here's my screenshot, here's the current Light Leak selected, and my original clip. I'm all of a sudden doing 3 clip comparisons, which is, I think, really handy for effects-based workflows, whether you can do this with lens flares or any of the Continuum effects that ship with the package. While also available in the host in Final Cut, there is a parameters panel here directly inside the effects editor that you can access. In most cases, the parameters or properties that you'll be utilizing are at the very top of the effect. With Light Leaks, we have control over the shape of the actual light leak, and then in the stylized category, control over a bit of the color, the look, as well as some auto-animated properties, such as flicker amount, which is synonymous with those light leaks. You'll also notice inside Final Cut, directly in the viewer, and inside the effects editor, we have an on-screen control that we can use to move around this light leak. Once we're happy, just to show one more thing, we have this split screen comparison. And Ben, I just actually discovered this today. I think this is incredibly cool. So besides the vertical and horizontal comparisons, like when you're in this mode, so I'm doing just a split comparison with the light leak after and the before, you can actually switch between vertical and horizontal by dragging on the borders here without having to click back and forth between these at the top. I think this is pretty cool for some split screen comparisons that you have right there in the effects editor.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now,
It's one of my favorite bits of that. So you don't have to sort of worry about clicking buttons, just keep dragging.
Yeah, it's like a nice little intuitive drag here for some split screen comparisons. Now, I always like to mention Continuum exists in several different applications. And if I were to come here and make some tweaks to light leaks here, let's increase the blur. and for stylistic purposes, I'll bring down the opacity. This can be saved as a preset. And the differences between this and your saving of presets that Jenn showed you inside of Final Cut is that Continuum presets exist cross-platform. So to save the preset, I'm going to click on this little icon here on the top right-hand corner, this list icon. And I'll call this LightLeaks Webinar. I can add a description, an author name, and some tags. But once I click OK, that preset now exists over here on the left-hand side. And if you right-click that preset, I can open a custom preset location where these are stored. So here are the various LightLeaks that I've saved so far. And this really small XML file can be sent to an editor that's working in with Resolve, or an editor that you're collaborating with who happens to be inside of Premiere Pro or even After Effects. So the fact that you can have these presets travel cross-platform, I think could add some incredible things when it comes to cross-collaboration between apps. So I'm going to press Apply to accept the changes that I made to the LightLeaks effect. And in many cases, let me do that again, selecting my presets, Apply. In many cases, or in some cases with the collection of BCC effects, there also happens to be transition counterparts that you can use. And this remains true of LightLeaks and Video Glitch, two new effects that are GPU accelerated. So if I headed to the transitions browser, there's one category here for BCC transitions. Steve showed you the lens flares from earlier. But here we have a LightLeaks dissolve that we can take advantage of, which we can easily drag and drop onto the edit point of a clip. And once I have that transition selected and with my playhead directly over top of it, I want to draw your attention here to the viewer where we have these on-screen controls. These actually will help control the easing in and easing out of the actual transition. So if I grabbed on to one of these handles here, I'm changing the transition timing. And then I'm changing here at the top the easing of the curve for how we go inside and outside of this LightLeaks transition. So these are actually affecting values or properties in every transition under the animation tuning section. So if I start to play with this again and then release my mouse, you'll see that the ease mid, ease in, and ease out values are changing depending on what part of the curve I drag on. Now, in addition to this, just like effects, transitions have a dedicated effects editor. And in order to have speed of use, what we have when we play back is the first frame of the outgoing clip, the last frame of the outgoing clip and the first frame of the incoming clip. So this just allows for speed of use here where we can choose between some of the presets available specifically for transitions. And just like our LightLeaks effects, we have all of the controls over here in the parameters. So we have the geometry and stylize category, not to mention my favorite, which is just choosing between different blend modes of your LightLeak built right into that effect. So maybe we want to go with an overlay look and even add additional mini LightLeaks to the major LightLeak. So every LightLeak actually ships with 4 generators. You can have a ton of control here to specify how you transition, use that LightLeak as a transition, not to mention use it as an effect. Let me click apply. There are over 15 transitions for you to play with. And I do want to mention one of my favorites when helping put together the FCP trailer is crash zoom. There's some pretty cool stuff that you can do there. I have an example of it right here at the end of my project, but allows you to create some pretty cool transitions between various frames of a shot where we can use this crash zoom on potentially a long dolly clip or between a wide shot and a close-up shot, and have a nice smooth crash zoom transition. Not to mention, in the effects editor, also work with a series of presets to get you started. In terms of new effects, I just wanted to cover one more. So we have stylistic light leaks that are available and GPU accelerated, and we also have video glitch. So here inside of a new project, I'm just going to hop back into my effects browser. This time I'm going to head to the BCC stylized category and apply video glitch. I think this effect is not only good for footage, but for titles as well. You get some nice digital damage there directly on your video clip. Not to mention a ton of control when it comes to playing around with each of the parameters that control the actual damage. Like we saw with light leaks, you can experiment by heading into the effects editor and then seeing a bunch of presets. In this case, not to mention also created by John Dickinson, have some great intense video glitch effects, not to mention effects that basically specify a specific parameter. So giving you an idea of what you could do with just playing with a shake in the Y position value by simply selecting that and previewing that here inside the effects editor. You could start there with some of these effects and playing with these styles. And just like light leaks, your video glitch effect has a transition counterpart that you can also use for the projects that need that type of stylistic treatment. So now we've covered a few of the new effects, and there are several, but just touching upon some of my favorites. I wanted to head and take a look at how Mocha is integrated into each of these effects. And I thought we would take a look at an example of a little bit of a car track. This goes really nicely into some of the stuff that Josh was showing earlier. But I'm in a situation where I want to change the color of this car. With changing the color of this car, there is something that I don't want, which is I don't want to change the color of the actual windshield here. And if we take a close look at the top of the actual SUV, there's a bag on top, and I don't want that to be included as well. There are several different continuum effects that we can use to colorize this. In this particular case, I'll go up to my all category, and I'm going to do a search for BCC photographic, which happens to have just a one color slider here, not to mention some color controls that would make changing the color of this car pretty simple. So I'll change the color and just for the time being, play with the exposure compensation and preserve highlights. And if need be, of course, I could go to the effects editor to choose a preset. Now that I've changed the properties or parameters of this effect, here's where I'm going to head into Mocha. And I'm going to click on the Mocha Mask button to go inside. Now, as Mocha launches, there's a bunch of things sort of happening in the background in this process that we'll get into in a second. But anything that I now do in Mocha, that mask is going to appear directly on the Final Cut clip. So let's take a look at this shot first of all. I'm going to drag the playhead at the bottom here of Mocha's Essential workspace. In fact, I'll just play this back. And while not showing in real time, I'll just mention here that we can see that there is some translation movement, some scale, and some rotation movement with the camera. And what I'm going to do is create a very simple shape to track a plane / texture in the scene. And then after I've done with that track, I'm going to then attach to it a more complicated shape, which will keep the outline of the car. So let's start with the simple tracking shape. There are several tools here at the top of the toolbar that you can use to create your masks. I'm going to use the classic X-spline tool. On the screen here, you could use some handy shortcut keys such as Z, which will allow you to zoom in on the image. And then you can use the X tool temporarily to activate the hand tool in order to pan across that image. If you don't like the shortcuts, you could also use the tools here at the top for both hand and zoom. The shape I'm going to create is around the car and the shadow to start with. And I'm not going to worry about that I'm actually choosing a larger area here to start with. But what I want here is the actual textured pattern of the car, the shadow, and the ground. Mocha makes this really easy for us to start tracking, but looking at the camera information, I'm going to stick with tracking translation, scale, and rotation. So I don't need skew in this particular example. And let's start tracking this shot. Okay, a really simple shape. I'm going to click this track backward button to start. And we're going to let Mocha do its thing. And I'm going to reveal to you something that will give me a little bit more accuracy in how Mocha did with the actual track. Okay, so we have some tracking information. I'm going to turn on two tools here. I'm going to turn on the planar surface tool and this grid tool. This is sort of my surface data. And I'm going to use this just now here as a guide to let me see how the track is done. So I've tracked this portion of the clip. I'm going to press the play button. How's that look to you, Ben?
Nick, absolutely locked on, rock solid.
Awesome. And this information for the time being is just helping me use as a guide to know that I have that tracking information. We don't have quite the shape that we want, but we have that information that we can use and attach other masks to it, which you'll see in a second. I'm going to let this track run just for a few more frames so that we have a completed example. It's not too long a clip, but we can see Mocha doing its thing. We can see that it's locked on to that texture that I've tracked. We have that tracking information that we can now utilize here and have our shapes attached to it. All right. Now that that track is done, a layer was created when I made that shape, and I'm just going to call this track. Now, I am going to go to the beginning of my timeline just so that we have a better zoomed in view of the car. And for the time being, I'm going to turn off those surface tools. I'm now going to draw a more complicated shape around the car. So I'll grab the X-spline tool and let's just make several points in quick unison. As much as I know it's a joy to watch me make all of these points, you can of course be much more accurate with this during your time creating these type of masks. So now I have that shape created. Might make a few changes to some of my sloppiness here with those points. Another little trick, by the way, is when you make more complex masks, you can select all the points by pressing Command A. And if you pull in, you can make them more curved or pull out to make them more rigid. Now, obviously, I don't want to track this more complicated shape. But what I can do is rename this. I'm going to call this shape car. And I'm going to attach that shape to the tracking data of the texture that I tracked. So all that's involved is with the shape car, this new layer, link this to that track. You'll notice that this little gear icon turns off there inside the layers, just to let you know that it's attached to something else. And if I just play this back, most of my hard work here, minus a little bit of tweaking, is done. That shape, that complex shape, is now attached to the tracking data. Now, in some applications, you might have to go forward and make additional changes to your mask. And I see here that on the more complex mask, there's a few problems. As I zoom out, the shape's a little bit wider than it should be. It's really easy to select these points and make a change on any frame. And what Mocha is going to do is create a keyframe. But that keyframe data, it's not creating keyframes on every single frame. It's separate. So it makes it really easy to interpolate between the actual track that's taken place and these adjustments, making for a pretty flexible workflow when it comes to some masks. Now, before going forward, let's see this all translate back into Final Cut. Before I go, I do want to make sure that what I tracked, that layer is turned off. I'm going to click this X on the top left-hand corner and save this. What we should see now back in Final Cut is that color is limited to the car. Pretty cool? And while Steve was mentioning that you can actually have circles and squares involved in your masks, this complicated shape you can't. Now, I did mention earlier when starting this example, I don't want to have this windshield or this other shape involved in the track. And I just want to show you how easy it is to tell Mocha not to include that area. If I go here to Mocha Mask, go back into Mocha, which has all of my data, I'm going to select that shape car that I made earlier. And under the X-spline tool, there's another tool here, which is an X+, which allows me to make additional shapes. And just for sake, I'm going to draw a little shape right here around that bag. Okay. I'm still on that plus tool. I close that shape out. I'll select it again and select another and create another shape right there around that front windshield. So now I've added two shapes, right? Actually, I made a new one by accident. Let me try that again. I'm going to keep everything on the same layer. There we go.
Can I just break in here a second, Nick? Because
yes, you can.
That actually brings up another little point. If you've got like multiple, slightly more complex shapes, like stuff that's moving in a slightly different way, you can link multiple layers to the same tracking data, so that you can build up several layers, each cutting out or adding to the mask, but all based off of that one track, so you can get some really complex masks really, really fast. So I just wanted to point that out to the viewers there.
No, I think that's like one of the biggest points about Mocha, Ben, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, is this idea of creating like simple shapes to perform your initial track, but then taking a series of complex layers, right, or layer shapes and attaching it to that tracking data. It just makes for such a flexible workflow and allowing you to break it down, extending the possibilities of what is available to you in Final Cut. And if I close this and just save this now, those two additional masks that I created, you can see that they're automatically subtracting from the main mask. Again, something you can't have added or subtractive masks in Final Cut. And I could do this all within the creation of two layers. And going back to my original point, create some pretty great production value with spending 10 to 15 minutes on a task like this. Broken down really simply, as you had said so eloquently, Ben, your ability to kind of attach those complex masks to a simple track. Cool. I just had one more thing to share, and I won't share this entire example, but one thing that has me excited, as I mentioned earlier, is the ability to kind of combine Mocha with the object tracker. So I wanted to give you an example here of a scene, and it's using similar techniques to what I did earlier. This clip in particular has BCC looks. That's that free plugin that we were talking about. I'm just going to turn this off and on so you can see that BCC looks is limited to the island here. I also want to point out one other thing about this shot. Do you see what's happening to that little inlet there, Ben? I mean, essentially it's going all the way off screen, right? Which for certain trackers could be complex because you need to essentially offset it. And Mocha has a system inside of it which makes keeping that shape and tracking data separate allowing for really fluent offset tracks. So if I hop inside Mocha Mask here, and we can take a look at some of the work I did. This is very similar to the example I showed earlier, but one additional part to it. I'm just going to focus on the track itself. So do you see this lovely piece of artwork I have here, Ben? That shape?
That's beautiful.
That's the shape it's
So
pretty cool,
nice.
right? It took me a couple hours, which is why I can't show it to you guys now. But this
Nice.
is the actual shape that took me a few hours. And I'm going to turn something on after my little beach ball stops thinking so much. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to turn on the planar surface. You can see I tried to identify here with that grid tool what's happening. And Ben, tell me if you see what's happening here when I move my mouse. Do you see how the shape...
Well, it appears the shape is being still, but the planar tracker is still moving.
Exactly. So the shape is remaining still, but the actual planar tracking, it's stuck to that surface. And it's all because of one simple control available to you in the Essential Workspace, which is this link to track control. Now, by default, those two are connected, right? Your track and your shape that you create are connected, but if you turn it to none, this planar surface kind of acts as almost like a scan, right? It's scanning that entire shot or the environment while keeping the other information separate, allowing you to track things like this that go off screen with precision and ease. And then after performing a track like this, I just attached a more complicated mask to that. I'll turn it on, and then made some keyframes here to adjust it over time because it sort of changes its perspective. And I'm able to take that complicated shape and then attach it to that track data. So that is pretty cool to see that workflow with offset. And I took it a step further by combining it with the object tracker. So in this particular shot, if I were to break it down, we have a few things going on. We have the original shot here on the bottom. And then just above that is a 3D piece of text directly from Final Cut. And this happens to be objects tracked to the scene. But I tracked some mountains here in the background. Last, I made a duplicate copy of the actual cutout of the island. And I'm using here on this top clip, if we look in the video inspector, one effect that's called a BCC composite. In fact, I have to hop inside my compound clip to show it to you. If we take a look here, here's BCC composite. This allows us to make cutouts, and it will then, through that cutout, have an alpha channel here in the background, which will allow us to see the text that's behind it, as well as the other layer. But this is the cutout that I got from that. And how I got this information, rather than recreate the entire track in BCC Composite, is that you can share your tracking data between BCC effects. So if I hopped back in to my original BCC plus looks by going into Mocha Masks, this data can be saved externally. So if you go to the File menu and we choose to export this project, you're basically saving a Mocha file onto your system, .mocha. That file can be opened up in any application that supports Mocha, right? So you could actually even share this if you have Sapphire running on a different system and you needed that particular mask for your shot, you could utilize that Mocha data. And you could save this and then utilize this in another BCC Plus effect directly in Final Cut. So I saved out this webinar mask that you can see here earlier today. And then by simply going into another effect and going into Mocha Mask on the BCC Plus composite, I was able to open that project that I saved by the same file menu. So if I go to File, Open Project, simply by navigating to my system, here we go, going to the desktop, here's that Mocha data. I can open it, the project will load and refresh, and I'll have all of that goodness and that data allowed me to create the cutout with BCC plus Composite, and then also integrate the object tracker inside of Final Cut with it. And that, Ben, brings me to the end of my demo.
Ooh, very nice, Nick. There's a ton of good stuff there. It's like, yeah, you hitting the nail on the head with Mocha. Like, one of the things that I like to do with Mocha is track once and use often. So, I mean, you showed different ways of doing that, using and recycling not just the tracking data in one effect to drive multiple layers, but also to just then take the more complex effect and move it between different Continuum plugins as well. And I think that's a really important feature that deserves sort of a bit of attention there.
Yeah, I think that to be able to share that between plugin packages and also just touching again upon cross-platform workflows. This is like kind of an undiscovered island. Even though I'm a Final Cut Pro user, I can still work with a Premiere Pro user and share this information, this data, as long as we have that package Continuum on our systems. And this just opens up a world of possibilities when it comes to those workflows by sharing effects presets with the effects editor, not to mention that Mocha data, being either able to reuse it between effects, but then cross-platform and in Sapphire, like you just said as well, Ben.
Yeah, that's it. Just one other thing about about your little presentation there is that you showed how you had some effects that also had like transition counterparts, and that's another way that I used to like working when I was editing. Is like you'd always be trying to do as much as you could without actually doing a lot of like hard work or hard keyframing or anything. So for things like the digital damage, like to get a little glitch effect just inside the same clip, a little tip there is just to add an edit onto the same clip and use the transition version of digital damage to however long you want it to go. And then you've got like a little kind of glitch just popping in there without having to add any keyframes, which is always a bit fun.
It's a great tip. I think also Final Cut users will love that, because even if you use Motion is such a driven motion graphics application where some of its biggest foundations are built on this idea of not keyframing. Half of the things that you can do are with the use of something called behaviors, which allow for animation of text and other layers and assets. And kind of taking that premise, Ben, like what you just mentioned, rather than have, to keyframe all of those parameters of the video glitch, you're able to just make an incision right there on your clip and then put that video glitch part, and then your animation is done for you. And then you can fine tune it with those easing controls.
Yeah, absolutely. If people want to learn more about learning how to use Mocha masks in Final Cut, where can they go?
That is a great question, Ben. So you can check out our Boris FX YouTube channel. We have an intro to moking video right there now that you can check out. Another one should be coming out shortly. I will say something in the background. There will also be some intro to Mocha training coming out shortly as well that we have in the works. It'll be 8 videos that sort of break down some of the major parts of using Mocha masking inside of Final Cut Pro. And if you don't want to wait for the Final Cut stuff, I know of someone pretty fantastic who has an entire Mocha essential training. Actually, I know 2 people, both Mary and Ben. How many hours of training is that with Mocha Essentials? I mean, it goes beyond masking, but it's
I think it's like 7.5 hours or something.
Okay.
Or maybe it's longer. I can't remember. It's a lot of videos, but for most people, like the first half an hour is the most important stuff. So if you've got half an hour free, or even broken up into like 5-minute times, then head on over, take a look at Mocha Essentials, and just figure out how it works. And then you can use Mocha wherever you find it. It's kind of cool.
And like you had mentioned, like in that course, that entire essentials, it goes beyond just Mocha Masking. You're talking about Mocha Pro and all of its possibilities with point-based tracking with some of the Sapphire effects and Continuum effects and other hosts, but then just what's available there with all of the different modules that you have. So quite an extensive list of training, but for Final Cut, those first two parts are pretty great. Pretty great. I feel like I'm hearing your voice right now, teaching me a few things.
Well, there you go. I always try. All right, but Nick, we're going to have to say goodbye to each other now.
We do.
It's a shame. I want to say thanks very much to you, Nick. Thanks very much to actually all of our guests, Jenn, Jager, Josh Morgan, Steve Martin, for like the fantastic work you've done today. If anyone's missed anything, we will be running this as a replay very shortly after the live event, and I have no doubt that we'll be cutting this up into smaller, more bite-sized parts as well. But thanks very much, Nick. Thanks, Jenn, Josh, and Steve. Only one more thing to do, and that's to give away some more stuff. So if people are ready for some stuff, we have one more permanent license of Continuum FCP to give away to one lucky winner today. We've given away 4 already, so let's see who's going to win the last prize. We have it going over to Hal Wagner. Hal Wagner, congratulations, you have won a permanent license of Continuum FCP. So to all of the winners of Continuum FCP, we will be talking to you very soon. But we've got one more winner coming up, and this is our big prize. This is going to be the Boris FX Suite, an annual subscription, which is everything that we make, including Continuum we've seen today, but also Sapphire, Mocha Pro, Silhouette, and Optics for doing stills work. So let's have a go. Who is it going to be? Final drum roll. Final drum roll. It's going to be Christine Cook. Congratulations, Christine. You have won the annual subscription to the Boris FX Suite. So Christine, and to all of our winners, we will be in contact with you in the next couple of days to tell you how to win. To tell you how to collect your prize, because you've already won. Congratulations. If you haven't won today, don't fear. Everyone actually gets a chance to walk home today with BCC plus looks for Final Cut Pro. Just head on over to the Boris FX website, go to the Continuum FCP page, and at the bottom of that, you will find a link to get that absolutely free. So if you're working on Final Cut, you can have a little taster of some of the stuff that we've seen today. All right, well, it's just going to be up to me now to say thank you very much, everyone, to watching. Thanks again to all of our guests. And for more information about what's coming up live, go over to borisfxlive.com for all information and details. My name is Ben Brownlee for Boris FX, and I will see you again very shortly. Bye for now.